Happy Halloween, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Nessie's Dead. As always, we are your hosts, Spencer and Helen.
Hello.
Hello, and very exciting because this is our Halloween episode. So hopefully everyone is having an absolutely wonderful and spooky Halloween. Hopefully everyone is also staying safe. And thank you for spending your Halloween with us. So with that, I actually had an idea to cover spooky places that people would go on Halloween.
That's different.
Yeah, I actually went through a lot of different stories and a lot of different ideas, from some crime cases to some not so interesting topics for Halloween. And what I kept coming back to were these compilation ideas of things that you would be drawn to on Halloween.
I love it.
So, should we go ahead and take our Halloween plunge into this?
Yes, let's do it. I'm very curious to see what list you've come up with.
Okay, so my first thought was, where would I typically be spending Halloween? If I'm going to like a Halloween party, it's probably going to be at a bar. So, let's go ahead and talk about some haunted, spooky bars.
I love a good haunted, spooky bar.
I know you do. This
Yes.
is right up your alley.
It sure is.
So we're going to kick it off in one of our favorite places in the world, which we have already talked about, and that is New Orleans.
Of course. It's got to be number one.
It is. It's always number one.
Yes.
Specifically, it's the Old Absinthe House.
Oh, I've been there.
You have? I have not. I'm
I
jealous.
have.
Okay, so you maybe know of all the hauntings there.
No, I went during the daytime, but I do think they covered it on the ghost tour, but I don't remember. There were too many hauntings and too many spooky spots in New Orleans to remember exactly. Yeah.
There are. So the Old Absinthe House sits at 240 Bourbon Street, and it actually dates back to 1752, and it is one of the oldest bars in New Orleans. But it had kind of a rough beginning because not long after its opening, it did burn down in a fire. However, two Spaniards did rebuild it, and it still stands to this day. It was also pretty big during the Prohibition era, which I thought was pretty cool, and it was a speakeasy during the 1920s, which I'm really into the Prohibition, so for me that was kind of exciting to learn. But fun fact, 7th U.S. President Andrew Jackson would frequent here, and this is where he met up with Jean Lafitte, who was a vicious pirate, and Andrew Jackson enlisted him and his pirate crew for their expertise so that they could partake in the War of 1812. In exchange, Jackson was offering a pardon for Jean Lafitte's past crimes. With the help of the pirates, America defeated the British in the War of 1812 and drove them out.
I did not know that.
Oh, surprise! A lot of people have kind of come to praise Jean Lafitte with that, but he was still a pirate and he was still not a great guy. Now, it is said that the ghost of Jean Lafitte can still be seen to this day, along with the whole pirate crew. They typically reside on the second floor, and workers actually say that they will hear wild laughter echoing through the bar, along with the breaking and clinking of glass. But they look around and there's no broken glass, and there's no one around. They just hear the clinks of glass and breaking glass.
That would be so cool to experience.
I agree. There's also a small ghost child that likes to play around mostly on the third floor. And another iconic figure from New Orleans that we see in this bar is Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen herself.
Now that would be an absolutely amazing experience to have.
Yeah, if I could just see her apparition, I would be very, very, very pleased. I don't need to see the pirates. I don't need to see Ghost Girl. I don't need to hear clinking glass. I just like to see Marie Laveau chilling in the bar.
You'd be like, that's it. I'm good to go.
It is said that she's usually seen in, I believe, a long white dress, and she would be sitting in the top looking out the window and then would just kind of disappear.
Very
Guests
cool.
also talk about how there will be random cold spots that just kind of appear throughout the building. And there are also reports of doors swinging open and shut by themselves, bottles and chairs, and other kind of barkeep items just randomly moving around on their own, along with creepy whispers in people's ears, which have no source, which I love. I love a creepy, disembodied whisper.
Yeah, definitely.
Some people have even mentioned seeing Andrew Jackson's ghost here at the Absinthe Bar.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't think he frequented it quite like that. Now, if people are like, oh my God, I just saw Andrew Jackson at the White House, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
I don't think he's haunting the French Quarter of New Orleans, honestly.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people from his day that could look just like him.
Yes, I agree. I agree for sure.
Especially if you're seeing him in ghost form. It's probably easy to just say, oh, it's Andrew Jackson, than just some random civilian that just happens to look like him as a ghost.
I agree. Now, I want to take us a little bit further southeast into Key West, Florida, to discuss another funky bar called Captain Tony's Saloon. Have you heard of this?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I'm actually like really interested in this one. So the very beginnings of what is now a bar and grill known as Captain Tony's Saloon goes back to the 1600s when 16 pirates were hanged from a tree on the land where the bar now resides. And alongside those 16 pirates was a woman who was also hanged. She had murdered her 2 sons and her husband, and she is now nicknamed the Lady in Blue. I'm sure everyone has guessed. Yes, she is one of the ghosts. Now, on this property, there have actually been a total of somewhere between 75 and 85 hangings from the trees on this property. The main one that had the 16 pirates and the Lady in Blue still stands to this day, and it is actually in the very center of the bar. So you can like hang out with the tree in the center, which I love. Isn't that amazing?
I don't know if I like that.
Oh, I love it. I think it is fascinating.
Oh, I don't know. That just gives me too much of the creeps.
So the building that is now Captain Tony's was built on this land in 1851, and it was initially used as a morgue.
And they thought this would be a great place for a bar?
Yeah, I think they have a slogan like, we keep your drinks cool and your body cool or something. But in 1865, a hurricane hit this area, and of course, water comes up through the city, and it floods the morgue and flushes out a lot of the bodies. They're just kind of swept away into the streets, and only one was recovered the next day. That one body was buried on site.
So we also have a grave on site as well.
Correct.
Okay.
So then in the 1980s, the floors were ripped up for some renovations, and under the building, they find the remains of at least 20 people. Alongside that, a gravestone marked Elvira Drew. Now, Elvira Drew was a child bride and was known to have been in an abusive relationship, and she died in 1822 at the age of 19. She actually murdered her husband and was hung at that same tree. Another gravestone was then found of Reba Sawyer. She was murdered by her husband after he found out that she was having an affair at Captain Tony's. So when he killed her, he buried her on site, saying that this is where you wanted to be anyway. And then also, there was this unknown woman who was at the bar with her child in the 1920s. She was looking for her husband, and she finds him here kissing another woman. So she proceeded to kill the baby in the restroom and flee the scene, and she was never caught. Isn't that like really weird?
That's horrible. Poor baby.
And women actually claim to see and hear strange things in that restroom.
Like crying, maybe?
I think so. And they also say it's just there's like a really weird feeling around the bathroom.
I'm sure.
Even the current owner, Joe Farber, he didn't believe in the supernatural at all. And he's even had his own share of experiences, leading him to now become a fellow believer. One night while he was closing, he heard his name being called out, but there was no one there. I guess he kind of just ignored it, and I don't know what he thought that was. Maybe a prank, or maybe he thought he was going crazy. But he just ignored it, went home, and it didn't happen again for a few years. But that next time that it happened, he heard the same voice calling his name and saying, Joe, come look, come here. And he ignored it yet again and went home around 3 a.m. Well, 6 a.m., he gets a call from the police saying that they just found the body of a dead girl who committed suicide at the bar. He now believes that there was some kind of spirit trying to warn him to save that girl, and he ignored it. Isn't that, like, intense?
That's very intense. Oh, I bet he feels terrible for not checking it out.
Yeah.
I bet next time he hears his name, he'll go check it out.
Oh, yeah, I would. Well, depends on where I am. In that context, I probably would.
Yeah.
There's even an incident where a man placed his hand on that hanging tree that is in the middle of the building now.
Oh, absolutely not.
And he received a pretty bad burn to the palm of his hand, and he had to be rushed to the hospital, and the doctors were really confused as to how he got third-degree burns from touching a tree.
Oh, I've got some explanations for that.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Did he mention what kind of tree, though?
I don't know. Well, 17 people were murdered at this tree.
Yeah.
There you go. That'll do it.
That'll do ya.
But that is Captain Tony's in Florida.
So when are we going?
I want to go. That's my favorite bar.
Really?
Like, in terms of the spooky ones I have, that's the one I want to go to the most. I mean, I want to go to Old Absinthe House just because it's New Orleans and I want to go back. But
yeah.
I think Captain Tony's is more interesting.
I'd say so.
My next one is also pretty interesting, and this one's going to take us to California. So this is the Silver Dollar Saloon in Marysville, California. It sits at 330 First Street, and the building was first built in 1851. Through its history, it has been a hotel, a restaurant, and even a brothel, but it is now a pub. It has that, like, perfect pub inside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the wooden beams, and it's kind of old world, just feels cozy and fabulous.
Yeah.
Now, up until 1972, the second floor was operating as a brothel, and supposedly, I guess this is not confirmed, but everyone in the area talks about it and believes in it. A woman who was working at the brothel was murdered there by a jealous boyfriend.
Wait, did you say up until 1972?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
At the same time, while the brothel is running, it is also a restaurant on the first floor known as the Guadalajara Cafe. This was ran by Natividad Corona, and his brother was actually a serial killer named Juan Corona, and Juan Corona is believed to have been the killer that helped coin the term serial killer, because before then, remember, it was called chain killer.
Yeah.
This was the guy that sparked the term serial killer, and he had killed 25 people. So the brother, Juan, had attacked a man in the bathroom of this location. His name was Jose Romero Rea. He hit him in the head and face with a machete and left him for dead. At around 1 a.m., he was discovered by customers and rushed to the hospital. He did actually make a full recovery.
How?
I don't know. But all of that, I think just having a really intense serial killer hanging out for quite a while and a potential murder upstairs has definitely sparked a lot of reason to be haunted.
Like dark energy?
For sure.
Yeah.
Workers claim that the lights constantly flicker, and of course the classic objects flying off of shelves. Two workers actually tell the story when this happened. When items were flying off the shelves, they ran out, jumped in the car, and started driving off when suddenly the car stalled, and they looked in the rearview mirror to see a woman standing there in a long white dress, and she then just dematerialized.
No, I believe them. Unless they were just having a really hard day at work and they were like, let's get out of here. I'm done with this. And then they got to the car and they were like, rent's due. We better go back. We better have a good story too.
Let's go break some dishes and say they flew off the shelves.
I better have a good story for this one.
So that is all I have for you on the haunted bars. Then I was thinking, well, people go to bars on Halloween. Where else would somebody go hang out? Maybe not most people, but I feel like people like you and I would go hang out in a graveyard.
Yes, why not?
Of course, naturally, I also have a collection of spooky graveyards to talk about.
Why wouldn't you have a collection of spooky graveyards to talk about? I would be disappointed if you didn't
I
already
know it's
have this
not Halloween
collection,
if you're not hanging at a graveyard.
right?
The first one I want to talk about is in Scotland. It is known as the Greyfriars Kirkyard in
Mm.
Edinburgh, Scotland. This very, very big, very fabulous old graveyard had its first burial in the 1600s, and that was when it was officially a graveyard or a cemetery. However, before that, in the 1330s, the land was also used for mass burials during the Black Plague. So
Oh,
there already were a lot of bodies, and I feel like those mass burials during the Black Plague were kind of a recipe for a haunting. People
yeah.
died in really terrible ways. A lot of them weren't even dead. They were still just sick and dying and not officially dead yet when they were covered up and buried with just a bunch of other dying sick people and already dead corpses. So, well, obviously corpses are dead, but the land,
Horrible.
yeah, the land already has a pretty heavy energy, I'm sure.
Yeah, most definitely.
But it officially got started as a graveyard in the 1600s. Lots of the graves are decorated in skeletons and skulls that say Momentum Mori, which means you too will die one day.
Hmm.
Or it's something like that. Like it's like a reminder of your flesh and bone and you will also die, which was a very common saying in European graveyards, actually.
Very comforting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Many others are actually covered in bars and cages to keep grave robbers at bay, and this is due to Burke and Hare, who were known body snatchers in the area in the late 1800s. They were actually digging up bodies and then selling them to local medical schools for profit, and they were
Mm,
caught and obviously arrested, and authorities were like, guess we gotta cage up the graves.
that's wild.
And before that, the grounds were also basically a concentration camp in 1679. Only separated by an iron gate was the Covenanters Penitentiary. Now, the Covenanters were a group who fought to protect Presbyterianism in the area from England taking over with Catholicism. At the time, King Henry II wanted to bring Catholicism into Scotland, and these Presbyterians were like, absolutely not. So they fought. Most of them were executed. The 1,200 remaining were put as prisoners in this penitentiary on the grounds of the cemetery. And they were
Mm.
essentially tortured and they all starved to death, which is why it's considered a concentration camp.
Well, yeah, that's definitely more of a concentration camp than a penitentiary.
Uh-huh. Well, and they weren't imprisoned for anything necessarily. They were just captured, sent to this place, and I think the term was penitentiary to kind of make it seem maybe
Less,
like yeah, to seem less concentration camp oriented.
well, we all know what it actually is.
Yes. So there's some more dark energy coming into this one.
Oh, yeah.
This is also the burial place of the Bloody Mackenzie. His real name was George Mackenzie, and he was appointed by King Charles II to lead the attack and persecution on the Presbyterian Covenanters. He is buried right there, basically on the same grounds that they all died. And I assume that when they died, they just also buried them there. But the nickname Bloody Mackenzie actually comes from the fact that he led the pain and suffering of these people.
Makes sense.
And it is said that he still actually terrorizes people to this day. There have been 350 reports of him attacking them, but from the other world, of course.
Oh, that's a lot of reports.
Yes. Even in 1998, a homeless man broke into his tomb to seek shelter during a storm, and he was terrified after the floor suddenly collapsed under him, leaving him in an ancient plague pit. Isn't that horrifying?
I can't imagine.
People believe that this kind of upset the ghost of Bloody Mackenzie, so he decided to seek vengeance on anyone who came near his tomb after that.
Makes sense.
Now, the claims of these ghostly attacks involve being pushed, scratched, bruised, and even bitten when people visit or walk near his tomb. There was even an exorcist called. His name was Colin Grant, and he was asked to rid the space of the dark energy, but he was spooked and fled almost immediately. He actually then died 2 weeks later from a heart attack.
I don't think this is the kind of cemetery I want to go hang out at.
No, not
I
this
think,
one. Maybe there's some calm ones where we can just watch some orbs fly around, but not this
yeah,
one.
let's avoid this one.
But then in 2004, some teenagers broke into the tomb to steal the skull of Bloody Mackenzie.
Did they not hear what was going on
I
beforehand?
don't know, especially with all the scary stuff that Bloody Mackenzie seems to be doing as a ghost. You're
Yeah.
then going to choose to take his skull. I feel like that would upset him a lot.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine.
Now, they actually successfully did it, and they got a hold of his skull and they started walking out. But conveniently, there was a ghost tour on site that caught the boys and noticed they were carrying an ancient skull.
Oh my God.
So they were stopped and the boys got in trouble, and the skull was placed back in the tomb with Bloody Mackenzie, and the tomb has since been locked up.
I can't believe they were actually able to get in there and do that.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of burial he had, but it wasn't very secure.
Doesn't sound like it at all. Yeah, no, I will not be visiting this cemetery.
Well, there's one thing that you might be interested in,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's something that I tried so hard to find more information on, but I feel like it's kind of gate kept. And no, not yet. We will get to aliens tonight, of course, but
Oh,
not
yay.
yet. There's actually a building on the grounds of this cemetery. It houses a cabinet of haunted dolls.
Oh, I love it. We need
I
to
know.
go.
How crazy. We'll just avoid Bloody Mackenzie's tomb.
Yes. But we got to go see the dolls.
Yeah. And they have tours that let you in to check out the dolls. And I guess that one of them, I think sometime in the 19th century, was believed to have caused a fire.
She's
And
spicy.
I really tried to find more information on these dolls, but you had to like book a trip. And I was like, I can't really afford Scotland right now just to get some information.
Maybe someday, not today.
Yeah, maybe our next episode.
Yeah, we'll take a small trip. I wonder if you can touch the dolls. Probably not.
I don't think so. It said a cabinet.
Oh, I wonder if you can bring your own haunted dolls in with you.
Do and collect, yeah. And I was really curious as to how the doll collection even started there. It seems like they started collecting them, like people started leaving old dolls in the area, and they just kind of found their way, and it became this whole collection. Next, we are going to head over to England, specifically the north side of London, to talk about Highgate Cemetery. It was established in 1839 due to the fact that London was like really overpopulated at this time. They were running out of places to keep the dead, and they were kind of just burying the dead anywhere, like in alleyways between buildings and in between shops and in the streets. So they came up with this plan to build these 7 really big cemeteries.
It's about time if they're burying the dead in the...
Right?
Can you imagine though if that's like the norm?
No, I
Like,
can't.
how wild you're gonna go get some bread and some soap that day and they're just burying a couple bodies in between the 2 shops you got to go to.
Yeah, you just kind of ignore it.
Yeah, because
That's just
normal.
what it is.
Yeah.
These 7 cemeteries were known as the Magnificent Seven, and this is actually one of them. So most of the graves are actually above ground in like little mausoleums, kind of like in New Orleans. And there are actually about 170,000 people buried here. Fun fact, it is actually listed as a nature reserve, which I thought was very interesting.
That's very odd. How is
It
it
is.
a nature preserve? Birds?
I don't really know, but it does sit at the edge of a forest,
Oh.
and it has since kind of been abandoned, leaving it to be very overgrown. So maybe they're like, oh, because it's all natural now, we're just going to classify it as a nature reserve. And another fun fact is pop star George Michael is actually buried here.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, it started to kind of fall on hard times during World War One when they were not getting enough groundskeepers and, people were getting drafted. So the employment just kind of dwindled and the upkeep was just not there in the cemetery. Then by World War Two, it was essentially completely abandoned and the gates were officially closed in 1960.
But they buried George Michaels there?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of odd.
That is odd. Maybe it was his favorite cemetery.
Yeah, there was some information about it. His mother was buried there, actually.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, there we
Yeah.
go.
But after that, it became used for filming some scary movies, fun fact. Some of those include 1972's Tales from the Crypt,
Oh,
1970's Taste the Blood of Dracula. I've never heard of that one.
no.
And even 2018's Fantastic Beasts. Now, that's not horror, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
a pretty
fantasy.
big movie.
Yeah.
But then also around the time that they started filming here, even though the gates had been closed, it seemed to open up something for some other spooky things to start happening.
They
Reports
riled
of
it all up.
they maybe did actually.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Reports of satanic rituals started to circulate in the area, and this was where the rituals were supposedly happening at the time. One man also reported that while driving by, his car actually broke down, and then he noticed two glowing red eyes staring back at him in the cemetery. And around that same time, there was a report of a man who was attacked by something while he was walking by. This sparked the stories of the Highgate vampire.
I love a
And
good
as
vampire.
I know, we don't talk about vampires enough here.
We don't.
As the lore goes, he was a nobleman from the medieval era and practiced dark magic in Romania. And he actually had a bit of a cult following. And when he
Hmm.
died, his followers actually relocated his body from Romania to England. And they buried him in the area that would end up becoming the Highgate Cemetery. He was buried there way before it became the cemetery. So he was resting peacefully until he was resurrected by satanic groups doing rituals in the cemetery. And it is said that now he roams and attacks people who pass by ever since. Locals also say that he most likely feeds on foxes for the most part. He is described as a very tall man, and they say that he's approaching when it starts to get really cold suddenly. So, naturally, with a vampire in the area, vampire hunters made themselves known. These self-proclaimed hunters took to the cemetery and they would proceed to open tombs, driving wooden stakes into the chests of corpses. They would also decapitate them.
Just random corpses?
Yeah, in hopes that they would find the sleeping vampire.
That's horrible.
No,
Imagine if that
I'm
was like,
crazy.
imagine if that was your loved one. You go to visit them and they're all dug up and
They're dug
staked
up and
through the heart.
yeah. And you're like, my God, Gramps
Gramps?
is a vampire? We both said Gramps.
Gramps?
Then on December 24th, 1969, a local magician, David Farrant, was convinced that he caught a glimpse of the Highgate vampire. And at the same time, another magician, Sean Manchester, was seeing all these reports of this other magician who saw the vampire. And so Sean was like, well, I'm going to catch the vampire and kill it. So we have more vampire hunters now. And this actually gave way to a rivalry between the men who both wanted to stop and kill the vampire.
That's a big one up.
Yeah. Sean actually gathered up a decent-sized mob on, of all days, Friday the 13th in March of 1970, and they set off to the cemetery to find the vampire. It is believed that the mob was actually involved in the charred and decapitated body of a woman who was found in the cemetery. And this feud between these two men actually continued until April of 2019 when Farrant died. Surprisingly enough, neither of them ever caught or killed the vampire. And it is said that that Highgate vampire still roams the cemetery eating foxes to this day.
I like that. Do you think it's a real vampire or just a
No,
legend? Oh,
I don't. Do you?
maybe.
Maybe. I'm very sure that it's haunted.
Maybe it's the ghost of a vampire.
Maybe. Maybe it's the ghost of an alien vampire.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah. Maybe he's going to team up with Sasquatch.
One could dream.
Our next spooky cemetery for tonight is Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, and that one is in Midlothian, Illinois.
Oh, back to the States.
Back to the States. So this was founded in 1864. The first burial was actually in 1834, but it was not officially considered a cemetery until 64. This is in Midlothian, which is a suburban area right outside of Chicago. The cemetery has seen a lot of neglect and vandalism over the years, but it has also seen a good amount of ghosts, of course. Reports began in the 1960s, but back in 1870, there was a farmer who was plowing the land with his horse, and the horse was suddenly spooked by something and started to kind of freak out. So the farmer is trying to calm the horse down, but in the midst of all this, he gets tangled up in the reins, and the horse proceeds to run, dragging the farmer behind, eventually killing him.
That's
So,
awful.
yeah. So, of course, people claim to see this ghost farmer and his horse relatively often.
The horse, too?
Yes.
Huh. Interesting.
Now, the next apparition that I want to talk about at the cemetery is very unique. I've never heard of this type of apparition. It's not of any particular person or animal or creature. It is a ghost house. It is called the Disappearing House, or the Phantom Farmhouse, or the Magic House. It is a Victorian-styled house complete with a porch swing and a white picket fence. And people report seeing this house just randomly in the middle of the cemetery, and they look away, and they look back, and it is gone.
Nobody's ever just made a straight run for it.
Well, other people who have seen it talk about how when they just stare at it, if they walk towards it, it just vanishes before their eyes.
That is peculiar. I don't think I've ever heard of a ghost house before.
No, but isn't that fun?
That is fun.
Some people even say that they can see a flickering candle in one of the windows before it vanishes. And records actually show that there were houses on that land that fit the disappearing house description. Not in the sense of these houses disappearing, but the Victorian style with the porch swing and everything.
Yeah. I wonder what happened in that house.
I know. No one knows who it belonged to, and there are no weird stories that are known of anyone from that area.
How bizarre. Maybe it's just like a dimensional thing.
Yeah, it might be some kind of like glitch.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And then we also have the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove, also known as the Woman in White. I notice female ghosts are always the lady in blue, the woman in white.
I don't know that too many people really see ghosts in bright colors, though.
If I'm a ghost, everyone's going to see me in like emerald.
You'll get what you get, honey. I don't think we get to pick.
I'm not wearing gray and white.
I think you only get like 3 colors. I think it's like gray, white, or blue.
Yeah, blue is a common one.
Yeah.
But she was first noted after being photographed by paranormal investigators, and it is described that she is wearing a white hooded robe and carrying a baby. A popular photo of her actually came about in 1991, and it depicts her just hanging out, sitting on a headstone. However, a lot of people believe that that photo is fake due to the fact that it is so clear. Here, let me send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me. I'll be the judge of that one.
So what do you think of that image?
I believe it.
I kind of do too, actually. I don't know why, but there's something that doesn't feel... I don't know, it feels real to me.
Yeah. I like how her leg is like see-through.
We love a see-through leg.
Well, the top portion of her is not see-through, and then it's like her leg is, but she has no face. Like, there's no facial features. I believe it.
Oh, also in the cemetery, we have orbs of blue and red light bouncing around the grounds, and a ghost dog. Now, the ghost dog is said to be black and brown, and people will see him just hanging out, just sitting in the cemetery. They think, oh, look, a normal dog. And then he dematerializes before their eyes. Not like a normal dog.
No, not at all. I like this cemetery. I would visit it.
Yeah, this one sounds more fun, whereas the other ones sound a little more dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about the vampire, but definitely I don't want to hang out with Bloody Mackenzie.
Oh, no.
So that is all I have for the graveyards and cemeteries. But then I was also thinking, where else would people hang out on Halloween? Now, you and I personally probably would not do this, but I do think the vibe is there. That would be the forest.
Oh, yeah. No, you will not find you or I hanging out in a forest, nor the night, especially on Halloween night. Absolutely not. No.
Well,
Well, you can go by yourself. Let me know how that works out.
so the first spooky forest we're going to talk about is also here in the States. It is called Randolph Forest. It is located in Maine. Back in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, there was a train that ran through the woods, and it was used to transport sick and wounded soldiers to the Togus Hospital. The tracks have since been removed, and there is obviously no train going through it anymore. However, hikers do claim that they will hear a train in the distance, and it sounds like it's coming, and then no train ever comes.
I think it's more of like an energetic imprint.
Yeah, I don't think it's a ghost train.
No.
Now, those train tracks actually ended up becoming a bike path known as Old Narrow Gauge Volunteer Trail. Bicyclist Lawrence Farrell, he actually was out biking in this area, and everyone in the area knew him, like in the local town. One day he went into the woods, took this trail, and vanished, and he was never seen again. Investigations led to literally nothing. They never found any trace of anything about him.
He got on that train.
Yeah, maybe he got on that ghost train.
Maybe.
People do believe that he haunts the forest still to this day, and there are sightings of him on that path, and he has become known as Bicycle Larry.
Oh, I like that. Bicycle Larry.
Yeah, I don't believe he torments or freaks anyone out like Bloody Mackenzie. He seems to be a little bit more of a friendly type of ghost. There's also an area in the forest that always is dark. Even midday, no matter how light it is outside, it remains dark, which is very odd. No one has really been able to figure out what that is about. It is, of course, believed that satanic rituals take place in this area, and that is what causes it to be so dark. I don't agree with that, but
I think it's the other way around. I think because it's so dark, the rituals take place there.
Yes, it's like there's an inherent darkness, so let's go ahead and play with that darkness kind of vibe. So it's also said that there are shadow beings in the forest. There was even one known as the foul-mouthed shadow creature, and it was caught on a dash cam, and it is described to be kind of like an animal shape, and paranormal investigators believed it was a spirit of an animal that died in the area. Other people claim it to be a local hellhound.
Why do they call it foul mouth?
I'm not totally sure about that.
I was thinking of, like, when you said foul mouth, I was thinking of someone that just cusses at you randomly when you see them.
No, it's F-A-L, foul mouth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe it is maybe a geographical spot in the forest.
Gotcha.
I'm not very familiar with Maine, though. And, of course, my favorite entity in this forest would be the orbs that swarm around hikers. They don't cause any damage. They don't do anything to hurt anyone. They just gather in groups and swarm people walking through the woods.
I like that. I want to do that.
Those might be fairies, actually.
Oh, then never mind. I don't want to do that.
So next up is Daring Woods from Pluckley, England.
Oh, back across the pond.
Yes, we're jumping all over. Mm-hmm. So, Daring Woods has been nicknamed the Screaming Woods. In the 18th century, a highwayman was caught by locals He was pinned to a tree and then beheaded. It is now said that his ghost is pretty regularly seen among the trees here. But even creepier than that is on Halloween night, 1948, locals reported seeing strange lights and hearing screams coming from the woods. The following morning, a man walking his dog in the woods stumbles on a very gruesome sight of 20 dead bodies lying on the ground. They were identified as locals. They showed no clear signs of trauma, no signs of struggle. There was no apparent cause of death. They never found an official cause of death. So to kind of just wrap things up, the authorities were like, oh, must have been carbon monoxide poisoning, and all these 20 people fled in a panic and died in the woods.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes no sense.
Yeah, because you have to be in the carbon monoxide for it to kill you.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what that was about. Maybe that was some kind of cover-up situation, but this has become known as the Daring Wood Massacre.
That's so bizarre. Just like 20 people just laying there dead and they never figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they all took poison.
Well, wouldn't they have found poison in their system then?
What year was it?
48.
Oh, maybe.
Well, then, in 1964, private investigator Robert Collins was doing some investigations into the woods because there were some supposed cults operating in the area. And while he was investigating it, he actually died in a car crash.
Does he haunt the woods now, too?
No, I just thought it was odd that he died while investigating.
Yeah.
But then...
they cursed him.
Yeah, they could have used the car to take care of him, to get him off their tracks.
Yeah, so that he wouldn't expose who they were, especially if he was getting close to solving it.
Yeah, if he figured out that there really was a cult in the woods.
And who they were, what they were doing, they probably did take him out.
But then, also, in October 1998, so almost exactly 50 years after the Daring Wood Massacre, 4 college students set out into the Daring Woods for a camping trip. However, they completely vanished and were never seen again, and nothing was ever found. And it is said that there were these lights over the woods that kind of looked like spider webs that people reported that night.
Aliens.
Halloween 1948, so October 1948, and then 50 years later, October 1998, people either die or go missing under strange circumstances, followed by strange lights in the woods. I can't help but think that that might be kind of connected.
Oh, most definitely. I feel like it would be. It's too much of a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder where they went, what happened.
Yeah.
No bodies or anything, just vanished?
No. And some people say that this never really happened, but locals do say it did happen. I usually trust locals.
Yeah.
People also claim to hear screams echoing through the woods, and they look around and, no one is there.
That's common in woods, though.
Yeah. That could be skinwalkers.
That's why you and I don't venture into the woods. No.
That's not for me. I'm just afraid of rogue serial killers.
I'm afraid of it all of it.
Well, maybe you and I can hang out in this next spooky woods.
And we'll see.
So this one, we're going to be going to Transylvania, Romania. This is nicknamed the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. And it is the Hoia Bashu Forest.
I'm already a no on this one.
Yeah. So this one, I'm sure everyone has seen images of it. This is the one where some of the trees grow in a way that no other trees grow anywhere else in the world. They kind of have a hook-like shape.
Oh, no, I have not seen this.
Really?
Yeah, send me a picture.
Okay, it's the top left corner of trees.
Oh, so that's wild.
Yeah. Do you see how they're kind of hook-shaped?
Yeah, they all look like the letter C.
I thought more of an S.
No, they look more like a C to me.
Now, this is actually considered to be the most haunted forest in the world. It actually got its name from a local shepherd, Hoia. He went missing along with his flock of 200 sheep while in the woods, and he just vanished. Him and the 200 sheep were never seen again.
That's a lot of sheep just to
That
vanish.
I know. You'd think one or two at the very least would come around,
Yeah.
or you'd find the remains of a bunch of sheep.
What's with all these vanishings?
That's why you don't go in most of the woods, people.
See, I keep telling you, and you're all wanting to play with the woods over there.
When people enter the woods, they actually claim to become very nauseous and incredibly anxious. A lot of electronic devices, such as phones, will just completely stop working.
I wonder if there's like a magnetic force in those woods.
Yes, there actually is.
Oh, okay.
Scientists have been trying to figure out why these woods are so strange, why there are certain areas where there are no animals and no vegetation. So there's a clearing, it's this like circular spot in the woods, and it's completely barren. There are trees there, but other than the trees, nothing can grow. They test the soil and they can't figure it out. They're just like, well, the soil won't allow for anything to grow, but they can't find any reason.
Don't they have a name for the spot?
For all I know, they just refer to it as the clearing.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's a different forest. I'm thinking there's another forest. Well, there's a forest in the United States, actually, that has a spot like that.
Where it said the devil dances?
Yeah, that one.
I know that one. That one is like it's like a circular patch in a field or something of just dirt, and no animals will cross it.
And nothing grows.
Yeah, honorable mention.
Honorable, but that's very interesting. I wonder what makes that happen like that.
Some scientists believe that it has to do with the electromagnetic frequencies in the area. In the 1970s, a Romanian physicist, Dr. Adrian Patrut, conducted tests, and he was like shocked that there were so many magnetic anomalies in this area. They think that could be part of why some of those trees grow so weird. I personally think that there is some kind of strange energy and that it's just reading as bizarre electromagnetic frequencies, because that is essentially what it would be.
Yeah.
I think they're just looking at it from kind of a black and white perspective.
I think so too.
But this particular forest is actually said to have been around since the prehistoric times, and there have even been Neolithic discoveries made here. The Thracian tribe inhabited this area from 500 BCE to 106 CE. So it's very old.
Yeah.
And I feel very similar to Appalachia, that these very ancient spots that are some of the oldest parts of the earth, they typically have these very strange energies.
Yeah, it's like they're harboring a lot of energy and it's just building up over time. That's how I think of it.
Now, plenty of reports actually come in regularly involving strange lights and UFOs flying over the woods. In 1960, a biologist photographed a flying disc. Then, in 1968, military technician Emil Barnea photographed some type of UFO flying over that clearing in the woods. He actually ended up being discharged. He lost his job because of it. The government was like, no, you're not, this isn't real. Like, you're not talking about UFOs. And he was like, this is real. I saw what I saw. So they thought he was crazy and did away with him.
You know, I was going to say aliens when you said that plot of area that won't grow anything. But then I was like, no, Helen, don't bring aliens into this. There's no need.
For this one, it would have actually been correct.
Yes.
It would have worked.
Because I was thinking like if a UFO or something landed, it could have like messed up the Earth's natural magnetic frequency, made it all haywire. So that's where my mind was getting when I saw like the curved trees and then you were saying the spot that doesn't grow anything. I was like aliens, but I was like, no, Helen, just shh. You always say aliens.
I think that makes sense for this particular case, actually.
Yeah, it does.
I think it's very similar to like in Appalachia, the Bennington Triangle, where Mothman and Sasquatch and Flatwoods Monster have been hanging out. Or like with the Bermuda Triangle. I'm not sure if this particular forest makes any triangular shape. Geography is not my strong suit, but it does have very similar characteristics to these other locations.
Yeah.
I feel like it also could maybe act as some kind of portal, and maybe that's why things don't grow there. Maybe that's exactly why in, for instance, the Bermuda Triangle, things go missing so easily.
Mm,
And there have been a lot. I mean, 200 sheep go missing in this forest. That's crazy.
portal.
Now, there also was a young girl who went into the woods and she vanished. However, she actually reappeared 5 years later with no memory of what happened, of where she was. And the locals said that she came out 5 years later, but she was the same age. She looked the same in everything, as if no time had passed.
That's either a portal or aliens.
Yeah, I agree. Or fairies. I guess
Could
fairies
be.
would be portal based.
Yeah.
And of course, people claim to hear disembodied voices, giggles, and screams throughout the woods. And
Mm,
again, no one is there. I feel like the disembodied voices are a very popular theme tonight.
very much so. Well, you can't have a haunting without disembodied voices.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Now, that's predominantly all I have for you on this fabulous Halloween night.
I love
However,
it.
thank you. There was one more place that I thought about that people hang out for Halloween. Like when kids go trick or treating and they're out on sidewalks and on the road. Not on the road driving, of course, but they're out on the street going door to door.
Hmm.
Now, I did come across a haunted road in New Jersey, and this is referred to as Clinton Road. It is in the center of West Milford, New Jersey. People claim to see phantom headlights appear as they're driving. They'll see what seems to be a car, on the opposite side, kind of heading towards them. As it approaches, they see that there's actually no car, and those headlights just kind of vanish.
Oh, I think it's the same as the train.
Oh,
It's a,
yeah.
it's an
Yeah, I do
imprint.
too. And the road actually has a section with a bridge where supposedly a little boy had drowned to death in the water below. It is said that if you toss a coin off the bridge, he will toss it back at you. Or if you throw a coin off of the bridge, you should pay attention to the coin that you toss, because if you return the next morning, you will see that that exact coin has been placed back on the road by the little boy, the ghost boy.
Oh, I would like to try that.
I would too. I'd be very interested in that. Now, I don't have a whole lot of other information on this particular road or any other roads to dive into. I just kind of wanted to share that because I kept thinking that being out on the road it was kind of a Halloween-y thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I love it. I loved all of it.
Just something easy and fun and spooky. Kind of touched on everything that we love on Halloween.
Yes, most definitely. I do love a good ghost story.
I usually don't, like, at
Oh,
all.
I do.
The only time I do is when they are location oriented, which of course that's what ghosts usually are, but I'm less interested in hearing about the stories of the ghost and more the stories that lead to the haunting.
Like the history behind it all.
Yeah. I think as everyone's kind of figuring out, I love a compilation.
You do.
I've done my New Orleans compilation, my When Objects Kill, Cursed Object compilation. The Hotel Cecil is kind of a compilation.
Yeah.
Tut was kind of a compilation of weird deaths. Here's another one. That's my forte.
It is. We're just going to know what to expect now. You're going to have to change it up.
I know.
Well, that was excellent and nice and spooky for Halloween.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and please be safe, have fun, and definitely celebrate everyone's favorite holiday, Halloween.
And with that, I guess we'll say pleasant nightmares.
And good night.
Bye.
Bye.